Hi, I'm Natalie Bouchard, and you're listening to Inside NC Labor, a podcast designed to inform and educate North Carolina citizens on the role that the Department of Labor plays in state government.
Hi everyone, welcome to Inside NC Labor. I am Natalie Bouchard, Public Information Officer, and today I'm co-hosting the podcast with Jennifer Hagewood, Communications Director.
Hi Natalie,
Hi.
It's good to be here today.
Good to have you. And we've hosted Jennifer a couple times before, but now she's doing the hosting. And we also have Kisha Holmes, who is the administrator for the Wage and Hour Division for the North Carolina Department of Labor. How are you, Kisha?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing well. Really glad to have you. So today we're basically going to talk about the Youth Employment Certificate process, and we have a lot to cover. First off, could you just tell us a little bit about your job, what you do, and your history with the department?
Yes, I am the administrator with the North Carolina Department of Labor Wage and Hour Bureau. I've been here for about 13 years, and I've been able to go through the ranks. I started as an investigator, and then a senior investigator, supervisor, deputy administrator, and now I am the administrator. What we do at the Wage and Hour Bureau is we look at things that are covered under the North Carolina Wage and Hour Act, such as minimum wage, overtime, wage payment, which is anything promised, and youth employment. We have some other areas that we focus on, but the majority of our work is based out of the North Carolina Wage and Hour Act.
Wow, Kisha, you all cover a lot of ground over there.
Yes, we do.
Today we're going to be focusing specifically, though, on those youth employment certificates. And can you just start off by telling us who is required to get a youth employment certificate?
Youth that are under the age of 18, unless they are exempt, are required to obtain a youth employment certificate.
Gotcha. So speaking of, I know we will refer to Youth Employment Certificate a lot, and sometimes we abbreviate it as YEC. There's a lot of acronyms in NCDOL. Just for our listeners, so you know, YEC means Youth Employment Certificate. Speaking of those certificates, there was recently a change to the YEC process. So could you tell us a little bit how the new process works?
Yes. Everything is online, which prior to the new changes, we had some things online, then other things were a hard copy. With the new process, everything is online. All parties sign everything electronically. We no longer have any paper copies of anything as far as the certificates are concerned. The youth, they enter their information, and then they receive a youth employment identification number. That number is then provided to the employer. Once the youth employment identification number is provided to the employer will go to our website and click on the link for employers, enter their information, enter the youth employment identification number, and look at the job duties for the youth, and then electronically sign the certificate. Once the certificate is electronically signed by the employer, it goes back to the youth via email for the youth to go in and electronically sign their name, enter their parents' information, and then the parent goes in, they receive an email, they go in and electronically sign, and then the certificate is issued.
It's my understanding that this change took a lot of work on, not only your end and a lot of work internally at the department. It's also a big change for everyone who's going through the process. Why was this new process necessary?
The new process was necessary because it allows the certificate to be electronic, and then we can maintain the certificate in our database, and the certificate also has all of the parties' electronic signature. It also allows the department to monitor the issuance of the certificate and gives the department direct access to retrieve the certificates that are issued and also signed by the youth, the parent, and the employer. It eliminates all paper copies of the certificate, and then since the employer is ultimately responsible for maintaining the certificate, it allows the employer to enter their information accurately, verify that information, and then enter the job duties of the youth to ensure that the youth is authorized to work in that occupation.
Great. So a quick note for our listeners. If you listen to episode 26 of Inside NC Labor, we had Shannon Council on, and she spoke about the old certificate process. And we know, this process is a big change for everyone involved, as Jennifer mentioned, as Kisha mentioned. How is this process an improvement from the old process?
In both processes, we review the certificates on a daily basis. The old process, what happened is the youth would go in and enter their information as well as the employer's information. And then they had to have access to a printer because they would print the youth employment certificate and then take it to the employer. The new process allows the youth to enter their data and the employer to enter their data, which all of that information is accurate because you have the youth responsible for their name, address, telephone number, date of birth, and then once it gets to the employer knows the name of the business, the address, the telephone number, the contact information. So it eliminates paper copies and ink signatures. Everything is electronic. All of the signatures are electronic. And instead of the youth physically taking the certificate to the employer, the youth provides the youth employment identification number to the employer through phone, email, or in person. We think it's a faster process because it's electronic. In addition to that, you sometimes had the youth, if there was an ABC on-premise permit, and in the old process, if the youth entered that information, they don't necessarily know what an ABC on-premise permit is or if the employer has one. So the new process, the employer is responsible for all of the information as it pertains to the business.
Right. That's important. You don't want youths working jobs that legally they can't just because of a fluke in the certificate process.
Right. It's human nature to not like change. And I certainly understand that, but just based on everything you've just told us, Kisha, it sounds like once you get past the change, it is going to be, hugely beneficial to everyone involved. Would you tell us, since the new system has been in place, how's it going so far?
It's going very well. We are receiving questions regarding the process. With the new process, we know that the certificate is issued by the employer because they've entered their data and electronically signed. We can also track each certificate that is signed and issued. If the youth has questions, they can give us a call and say, I received my youth employment ID, but I have not received an additional email. We can go into our system and look to see where they are in the process. Everyone, to include our department, has an immediate copy of the certificate once it's issued. Before, the youth would print the certificate again and take it to the employer, and we had no way to know if the paper certificate was actually issued. Now we can see all of the certificates that are issued because we have the ability to see all of the electronic signatures.
It sounds like we have a good process for abating any kind of issues that youths or employers or parents/guardians are having. In general, how are all those parties, employers, parents, and youths, responding to the process?
Well, just like Jennifer said, change is hard, and it's an adjustment overall for everybody, but it's been a good process, and we've received a good response. We have the call center. They take calls Monday through Friday between 8 a.m. and 4:45 p.m. So, again, callers can get immediate assistance regarding the process. So they can call if they have questions about the certificate. The employer can call if they haven't received any information back from the youth or anything like that. So having the call center alone makes the process a lot better and getting a response from all parties.
Well, Natalie and Kisha, both of you all mentioned this a few minutes ago, but one of the most important benefits to this new system is really making sure that we don't have youth employees working in jobs that are hazardous or detrimental. And there are some jobs in the law that kids under the age of 18 are not permitted to work. Can you give us a few examples of jobs that youths are not permitted to work in?
Yes, the U.S. Department of Labor actually has 17 hazardous occupations that prohibits youth to work in. Some examples of those are manufacturing and storing, logging and sawmilling, mining, manufacturing and storing explosives, those, North Carolina has 9 detrimental occupations that youth are prohibited from working in. And some examples of those are welding, exposure to lead, work in confined areas, electricians or electrician helpers, and there's some others. All of these are listed on our website, so if anyone ever had any questions, they could go to our website and look at all 17 hazardous occupations and the 9 detrimental occupations that North Carolina also enforces.
That's a great point mentioning the website, because yes, all of this information is also on our website, as well as the steps for the youth employment certificate process. So that's a great resource for people who are wondering more or want to learn more about this process. Who should people contact if they need any assistance with the YEC process? I know you mentioned this a little earlier.
Yes. Again, they can contact our call center, and that number is 1-800-625-2267, or an easy way to remember it is 1-800-NC-LABOR. We are open 8 a.m. to 4:45 p.m. Monday through Friday, and we are always happy to answer any questions or walk them through the process if they're having any difficulty.
Wonderful.
Kisha, thank you so much for sharing all of this information with our listeners. As you said at the front end of this, you all do so many different things in wage and hour, but I would go out on a limb and say that this is one of the most important things that you all do, is making sure that our youths that are out there in the working world already are doing jobs that are safe and appropriate for them. So thank you for that.
That is correct, and thank you for having me. I really encourage everyone to utilize our call center if they have questions, whether it's about youth employment or promised wages, minimum wage, and overtime. You have access to a live person, and you can give them a call and ask any questions that you may have regarding anything with the North Carolina Department of Labor.
Kisha, thank you so much. Thanks so much for tuning in, y'all. Remember, your safety is our priority.